return, actually.
Oh, what fun.
Actually, more than a VAT return. We're having a VAT check, where we have to go through all our old VATs.
Oh, that's
very, very tedious. Totally random, or so we're told.
Yeah, not very helpful. Not much fun.
Yeah, but so I'm just trying to check that everything's straight. I think it is. Anyway, how's it going?
It's good. First of all, let me say thank you so much for bearing with my stupid diary this week.
No worries. I'm not really going anywhere today, so it's absolutely fine.
Well, I really appreciate it. The FT is sending me to Egypt tomorrow to cover a story.
Really?
And it was one of those things that sort of, 2 days ago it wasn't happening and now it is. So I've been running around town getting booster jabs and, currency and a briefing and...
Wow, that's quite fun.
Yeah, it'll be good. I'm excited to go. I've never been before, and it's kind of a nuts trip. So
yeah, I was thinking the other day that I had never seen the pyramids, and I probably should. I'm thinking how I was going to do that.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to get to see the pyramids, but I am going to get to go to Luxor and see some temples.
Oh, brilliant.
So there's a little bit of culture in the mix, which is fun, but it's just put pressure on everything else, as these things always do. So thank you for bearing with me.
No problem. So should I let George know that you won't be coming to the shop tomorrow?
I won't be coming to the shop tomorrow.
Okay, right. So this is in lieu of that. Okay.
This is in lieu of that, exactly. Sooner or later, I'll make it into the bloody shop and see both of you at once. I did see George very briefly on the weekend because I was.
Yeah. He said
I was mooching around town, so I popped in and said hello. It looks like you guys are busy.
Yeah, we are. I mean, this year compared to last, it's obviously very different. Same for everyone, I imagine.
Yeah.
We are very busy we have quite limited capacity in terms of how many suits we can make, to be honest. So it doesn't take a lot to book us out.
How does, what sort of works from you from a business perspective? How many suits do you need to do a month to be happy?
We try and aim for about 3.
Oh, really? Cool.
Well, no, actually, 3 would be a good month. Probably 2, really. It's, that's roughly what we do. And then we sort of obviously have the retail side as well.
And that
which has
helps
steadily grown and is now, sort of outpacing the bespoke a bit, which is good. But it was the fact that we had the tailoring that enabled us to open the shop, because if we'd just been launching a brand, then, we would have had nothing coming in probably at the start. Whereas really we were just transitioning from a studio space to a shop, and we knew we could probably, sort of afford that.
Yeah.
And then have time to work on the other stuff.
Well, can I take it? I'd like to just jump back to the beginning, if that's all right, and get the full story. How did you two meet?
So we met. I was at university in London, probably my first year of university, or just about to start. And actually, no, I'd just done my first year, and I was just having a drink with a friend. And I said, I really want to try and get experience at Taylor's this summer. And they said, I know this guy who's just come back from Milan, and he's been tailoring there, and he wants somebody to work with him and sort of train. And this was George, and he was based in like a little lockup, basically, in a place called Colbert Court in Battersea, which is basically just like a series of lockups by the railway line where you have people doing bits and bobs. Luckily it was really near to where I live, so I went and met him, and then we started working together, and I basically started doing it alongside my degree for the next 3 years. And so we were working together in this little workshop, basically. And then when I graduated, we both decided to go to Italy to do a bit of tailoring there. George obviously had been to Milan. He went before me. He went to live in a place called San Casciano, which is in Tuscany, working for an old coat maker called Maru, who at that point was just doing sort of freelance stuff for a few of the Florentine houses.
Right.
And then he eventually ended up at Livorno, and then was working at a much smaller, crappier neighbourhood tailor called Sagliano, who's actually run by a brilliant guy. He's a great man, but a slightly different type of tailoring. He was actually Neapolitan, but come up to Florence.
Right.
And so we lived together in a flat in Florence, working for these two tailors. And then eventually we came back and decided, at first it was sort of vague what we were going to do at first. We thought, I wasn't that sure if I'd continue with tailoring because I wasn't very good at it. So, that kind of paradox of like the better you get at something, the sort of worse you realise you actually are.
Right.
I was looking especially at George by comparison to him, and I was thinking like, I love this, but like realistically, am I going to make a career out of this? So I was sort of willing to go off and do something else. And then George said, well, why don't we just, give this a crack, get a shop and a place where we can get reasonable rent. And, you can do everything else, run it. You can start something else within it. So we've started a small brand alongside it. And so, that's how it happened, really. The big thing I've left out of this is why we're called Speciale. And the reason is that Speciale was an old Florentine tailor's, probably operating sort of 70s, 80s, 90s. Tiny tailors, led by a guy, because back then all tailors was named eponymously, or they still are. And he, his last apprentice was a guy called Lorenzo Albrighi, who was the person that taught George in Milan. And so it was Speciale's process that George sort of inherited. And Speciale, when he died, he didn't have any heirs, or any family really, and he didn't have anyone to pass it on to. And Lorenzo, who taught George, didn't want to take it on. And then George said, well, I will sort of, resurrect the name, given I'm using his process.
Got you.
Hello?
So, yeah, I'm here. Don't worry, I'm here.
And then, so it's slightly complicated, but Maru, the coat maker that George then worked for later in Tuscany, was also a tailor with Speciale. So sort of everything insofar as, sort of the making process that goes on in Speciale is the process of the original El Speciale.
Amazing.
And so we decided to, basically sort of, revive the name. And there's a bit on our website explaining that. And the reason was just because he had just had this incredible, process in terms of making. In Florentine tailoring, the emphasis is much more on making. I think in English tailoring, generally so I'm now digressing, but sort of, I guess, an idea that the suit is sort of defined by how it's cut, and the making is, it's important. It's sort of slightly functional, by comparison. It's sort of like, you get the expression, made up, something's made up in something else. It's sort of like, it just happens. Whereas in Florence, the cut's very simple. It's just a single dart block. And it's really how a suit's made that kind of gives it its life and gives it its character.
Mm-hmm.
And you have these very small, not just Florence, small family run tailors in Italy that have like almost kind of monastic making process. So just like real density of handwork and care and ironwork all across the jacket. And I think it was when George and I saw these old bits of tailoring from the original Speciale that we decided to go out there in the first place. Because it was just so different from what we'd seen from English tailoring or gleaned from it.
So is it kind of all about the making for you guys? Is that what appealed to you? Yeah,
it is really. I mean, we're massive geeks, basically. I mean, it's I wouldn't expect everyone to sort of fetishize it like we have. But yeah, there are just lots of things in a Florentine jacket that I just really just love. I mean, it's like you can sort of point to any part of it, the way they sort of the way they prep the roll throughout the whole way through the jacket's being made, the way so much is done to keep the roll of the lapel going, the way they pad, the fact that there's almost nothing in the shoulder. I mean, I think Florentine, people often think there's a sliding scale of structuring down from kind of English down all the way to Naples, but actually Florentine jackets are the only jackets which you'll never see a shoulder pad in. And yeah, it's just, this kind of, they strip so